By 1954, when the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde were terminated by the federal government, less than 1% of the original 69,100-acre reservation granted by Presidential Executive Order in 1857 remained in tribal ownership. Over the course of almost 100 years, the more than 27 Native American tribes and bands that comprise the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde saw their land slowly whittled away by deception, neglect, and colonial efforts to divest Indian people of their property and rights by state and federal governments. After 21 years of termination, all that remained of the reservation was approximately 5 acres. But it was not always so. Members of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon descend from proud people who populated the vast territory of Western Oregon, southwestern Washington, and Northern California since time immemorial, before contact with European explorers and white settlers occurred in the early 19th century. There are more than 27 original tribes and bands that make up the Grand Ronde Confederation, with the central tribes being the Kalapuya, Umpqua, Molalla, Chinook, Rogue River, Tillamook, Shasta, and Chasta. 7 treaties were signed ceding their vast lands to the federal government in the 1850s. The native peoples were then herded together and temporarily relocated to a reservation at Table Rock near present-day Medford, Oregon. But hostilities with local settlers and miners forced relocation under armed guard to the Coast and Grand Ronde reservations. Tribal members were forced marched 263 miles over 33 days in February and March of 1856 to Grand Ronde. Along the way, 8 tribal members died, and 8 children were born. Despite being relocated to the supposed safety of the Grand Ronde Reservation, the assault on the tribe's way of life continued. In 1887, the Dawes Indian Allotment Act led to the loss of major portions of the reservation to non-Indian ownership. In 1901, U.S. Inspector James McLaughlin declared almost 26,000 acres of the reservation surplus and sold it for $1.10 per acre, reducing the reservation to a mere 440 acres. Much of the land was purchased by local timber interests. But in 1954, Congress passed the Western Oregon Indian Termination Act, severing the trust relationship between the federal government and the tribe, ending all federal services 2 years later. After 29 years of termination and almost a decade of work by numerous tribal members to get the Grand Ronde tribe restored to federal recognition, members Marvin Kimsey, Jackie Whistler, Catherine Harrison, her son Frank Harrison, and her daughter Karen Askins traveled to Washington, D.C. in October 1983 to testify before the House of Representatives about restoring the Grand Ronde tribe. After the House and Senate passed the bill, it was sent to President Ronald Reagan, who, on November 22, 1983, signed it into law and made the Grand Ronde a federally recognized tribe once again. The tribe was restored, and the work of rebuilding a nation began. In 1984, the first official post-restoration tribal council was sworn into office. 4 years later, in 1988, President Reagan signed the Grand Ronde Reservation Act into law, returning almost 10,000 acres of the original reservation to the tribe. In 1994, tribal membership voted to pursue gaming as a revenue source and used land that the tribe had purchased on Highway 18 on which to build Spirit Mountain Casino, which opened in October 1995. With a firm financial base, the tribe began building its membership services and restoring its cultural heritage. And resurrecting the native tradition of potlatch, the tribe created the Spirit Mountain Community Fund.